Hello and welcome to Discussions on Loss and Grief with Ray Warner, the podcast where we shine a light on the often avoided topics of grief and loss, while also getting to know a little bit about some amazing people who are no longer with us. I'm your host, Ray Warner, and on today's episode, I'm proud to bring you my friend Jessica Ericson. And she has an amazing story to tell, which has a recent development. And let me introduce you to her. Jessica, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so like Ray said, my name is Jessica Ericson. I was born and raised in Colorado, 34 years old. I'm an archaeologist, and I usually always say this, my favorite color is green, and I love quesadillas. Um, yeah, I think that's all about myself right now.
All right. So tell the audience the story of your loss.
Yes. So, uh, in the crazy series of events, and the whole reason I actually even know Ray, um, is because 5 years ago, um, I guess I could back up a little bit even further. 5.5-ish years ago, my grandpa was sick and he was dying. So he would babysit us and everything, and super fun guy, really, really great. But he ended up passing away in December of 20 um no, 18. Yeah, December of 2018. So my brother, Neil, he was just finishing up with his vet degree. He had just done his entire stint. He did vet school in St. Kitts down in the Caribbean. He had been going to school, just going for so long. And then his next step around the time that my grandpa or our grandpa passed away was to take the national exams for veterinarian students. And so he had been studying and studying, and honestly I kept telling him, like, you should probably take a break, and we had many conversations throughout the years of, like, hey, maybe just go, like, tr travel Europe or just something, go take a vacation, go do something for yourself in between all of your schooling. And he was like, no, I gotta keep doing this. He had this, linear route in his mind, and so he was like, I'm doing it. So he's studying for his national exams. It's winter time, there's a lot going on. And so January comes around and he's kind of like going through a lot relationship wise and all this stuff. And he's just kind of going through it. And things started piling up on his plate. And eventually he takes the national exam, and forgive me, but I don't remember the exact scoring. So I'm just going to say I think they need to get like a 425 to become nationally certified as a veterinarian and all
Mhm.
this stuff. And he got a 424. And like all of his friends, everybody from vet school, I think almost all of them passed. And so they all had jobs lined up. And honestly, it wasn't that big of a deal looking back, because he was already even starting to sign up for the next time he could take the test in a couple months. But yeah, like there was about five different things that just piled up on him. And yeah, one night I get a call from him, and he is like so happy. Um, and I had like a bunch going on too, so I was just like, I didn't really notice. I was like, oh, he seems jolly, like cool. Um, so we had a conversation and then got off the phone. Uh, but then the next night I called him because I was I was gonna see if I could borrow his drone that he had just gotten, just like trying to do stuff, whatever. And again, he was so happy. And he even started a Snapchat group with a bunch of our cousins. Like, he was just doing all these things, and it was very wholesome looking back. Um, but that night, after getting off the phone with him, and I even texted him later, he never texted me back. That night, he ended up taking his life. Um, and we didn't know that that had happened, which is unfortunate. So he lived an hour north of me, and my parents live 2 hours south of me. So we're all close, but not that close in geological reference. So we all had spoken with him that night in February, but we didn't hear from him the next day, which was no big deal. Like we don't talk every single day. But then the third day, we realized, hey, we haven't heard from Neil in a while. And my mom started calling me and like, he hasn't texted you or anything. I was like, no, I thought he was just, doing his thing. I didn't really think much of it. And then we started calling and I called and I was texting and my mom was texting. My dad was texting. My boyfriend at the time was texting. Nothing was coming up. Nothing was coming back. And then ensued the worst day of my life. My parents ended up driving up to his house and finding him. And that just was horrible. So, um, yeah, many things happened after that, but that's like the gist of it all. And in the end, like, yeah, he just was in a state and he did what he did. He took his life, and I know he regrets it, but that's just me being a sister, probably projecting my own
Yeah.
uh, thoughts on that. But that is the gist of it all. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you say is grief with stress. That's what it sounds like.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was uh the vet industry and the dentist industries are the two like leading, from what I've heard and like stats I've read about, like they're the two leading industries that have the highest suicide rates, which is just like, and then seeing what he went through also, it's just like, well, I can understand why. I mean, like they're overworked. And I mean, I know that's kind of how med school goes, and everybody, that's their badge of honor. They go through it and then they get through it and then they kind of balance their lives out again. But yeah, there's some people who just can't do it. And stressors get to people, and other options look better than what can the potential for the future can be. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Just piles on and there's a lack of hope.
An extreme lack of hope, and also societal expectations and just your own expectations, and
Mhm.
what you thought was going to be. I think there's the term expectation hangover. Like you think something's going to go this way and it doesn't, and then like how are you going to deal with that? How do you cope? What are the coping mechanisms that not only you grew up with, but then like that your industry, say if that's your position, does your industry provide things like that? Like I don't know, stuff like that. There's, you can always say what if and look back and be like, oh, I would have changed this or I would have done X, Y, Z. And it's like, I mean, we're all doing the best we can. So it's like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So what was the immediate impact of Neil's death on your life?
Uh, so Neil was 14 months younger than me, about a foot taller than me. Um, and we were best friends. Like we would talk crap to each other, send each other memes, send each other like all sorts of stuff. Like if I needed to remember something for the grocery store, like I would just text him and then I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember at the grocery store. I'll just look at my text thread to him. So I mean, in every possible way, there was an immediate impact because it was just like it was just he and I as well as the kids. So like all of a sudden it just felt like, yeah, it just felt like, and I was older than him, so I'm the oldest, but it almost was like a new responsibility that I felt like I needed to take on, of like I need to, I guess like I don't know how to say it. I took care of him in life, sure, but I guess this is gonna look new. So now I want to like represent him and like keep talking about him almost.
Mm.
So at his funeral, well, I guess a couple days before his funeral, I woke up and I couldn't get these words out of my head. Like I could not, I was like, I have to write this down. And so I was like, I wrote down what ended up becoming his eulogy for his funeral. And it was more or less like a celebratory, like, and I, to this day, unless I'm told otherwise, I refuse to wear black at a funeral because I am not mourning anyone's life. I'm celebrating their life. And it's because when Neil died, I didn't want to make his funeral even more sad than it already was. So I wore a red and like grayish dress, and like I dressed up because I'm like, I have to like, this isn't going to go down as, I mean, it's a tragedy. It was fucked up and horrible. Sorry for cussing, but it was just like, this gets to be something bigger because, it all started happening, and texts and emails and calls and things start coming in, and people send their condolences, and it's kind of overwhelming. And you're just like, and then everybody has their own, like, everybody deals with death differently. So like some family members were coming to me screaming, crying, and other ones were trying to console me. And it's just a complete, like, just, I don't even know. Like, it's just crazy when someone passes away. Um, and so yeah, I was like, this gets to be bigger. And so I invited for his funeral. We were supposed to have the family, and we were supposed to have some friends. And my parents thought that that's where it ended. And I was like, no, I invited his entire vet class, or just anybody I could. I invited friends and people from Facebook. So we ended up having like almost only standing room only.
Wow.
Um, I think there was a few chairs available, but it was like that because I was like, nope, nope, we're celebrating. Like, so a few friends played music, the violin and guitar. A couple guitar players came up and sang songs for him, and like one of his best friends created the playlist that went on for like when they were playing his all the pictures. So we found goofy
Mhm.
pictures of him and his friends and that kind of stuff. So it got to be something bigger, and the immediate impact was just both freaking horrible, but also like the seeds to start something a little bit bigger.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So celebrating his life, not focusing on his loss. That's what I'm hearing. That's what it was.
Yes. And I know that there needs to be space to focus on the loss. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like I was like, I just turned all that off, because that's not even an option. I mean, I
Yeah.
was crying my face off for, I mean, I still do every once in a while. Like that gets to be addressed, but also what got me through was looking to the future of how can we get it to where nobody else goes through this?
Mhm.
Uh, and where we can celebrate him. Yes. So there's that. Yes.
Talk a little bit more about how it affected you when you weren't focusing on Neil's legacy and celebrating him.
Okay. So when I wasn't celebrating him, is
Yeah,
that what you're
like
saying?
separate from that. Yeah, like how you
Yeah.
dealt with it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's see. So, I mean, before I ended up doing all the things that I ended up doing, I like it. Okay. How I describe it is that like my heart is like a bucket, and I have all of these emotions that are just sitting in there. And it like, I could feel the tears coming up and like the grief and emotion. And then at sometimes it would overflow. And then sometimes I would just let it rise. And I couldn't cry. I couldn't do anything in those moments because my heart wasn't ready to let that go. So in the moments when I wasn't focusing on like celebrating him or all this stuff, I mean, as anybody who experiences loss in the immediate aftermath, it's much just you're crying and you're just letting it all go. Some people get angry, some people whatever. But I mean, I started getting these rashes all over my face and body, like, because I think I was holding anger in, but I couldn't express it. Like, it's not that I don't know how to be angry, but it's just like stuff gets in there and trapped. And I'm like, I knew that I needed to do whatever I could. So my immediate goal was getting as many tools in my tool belt as I could to express whatever the hell needed to come out,
Yeah.
because there was all sorts that needed to come out. So I mean, I went to therapy. I started doing coaching. I would do like crazy dancing. Like I did pretty much anything. Yeah, I'd write him letters. I screamed a lot in the car. That was my favorite place to go berserk because nobody cares. Um, but then eventually, our friend Sabrina, she was like, "Hey, you want to do something that's better than therapy?"
Mm.
And that was next level trainings. So eventually she got me into it. I started doing next level. And then that kind of put me on a path of like, oh, I see how I could start making my dreams and like um, everything I was kind of envisioning in pieces come together. And so, and I got way more in tune with my emotions just from everything I was doing, not just next level, but I mean, just everything.
Yeah.
And just started getting that vision going. And so that's how I met you. You were my first
Yeah.
coach at next level. Thank you, Ray. Yeah, so we've had many, many talks about all of this
Yeah.
and so much more.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that all happened within the next less than a year,
Yeah.
basically
I
after
think
Neil
it
passed.
was.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
December of 2019 that we first,
Wow.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
that's how quick. S-
That's yeah, because Neil passed in February. I don't even really remember February, March into April. Like, I mean, I do, but I had to drop out of my grad school courses I was taking that semester. Like, I was just like,
Yeah.
nothing is working life. I cannot adult. Like, I'm gonna go lay in a hole and just cry my face off, and then I'll come back later. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Talk a little bit about what you created after your experience with Next Level and and that ties into what I mentioned earlier, the new big thing.
Oh my gosh, I am still a little baffled. So, okay, this is a lot, but basically, when I found out that Neil passed away, I had called my mom. She was crying on the phone because she was the one holding him and telling and just crying. So, all I hear is screaming and crying. So, I start screaming and crying, immediately knowing what had happened. Um, so about an hour before I found out that he had died, I was standing in a kitchen by myself with nobody around, and all I heard was this voice in my left ear, and it was his voice, and all he said was, "Hey, Jess." And just from that moment until like the few like couple hours after I found out that Neil had passed, I just started spewing out all of this, like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. And like one of them was, I'm going to start a scholarship and I'm going to write a book. So I randomly started just figuring out ways to start a scholarship. And I went to the bank at first. I was like, maybe a bank will try to help me or know what to do. And then the vet clinic that he was working at which is Mesa Vet Clinic down in Pueblo, Colorado. They were amazing. They're so wonderful. They still are so supportive. Like, man, they are some of the best people I know. But they have like a fund that you can pay into. So some people started paying into a fund, and like the company I worked for paid into that fund in honor of Neil. And the fund helps pets and people who can't afford to take care of their animals. It helps them buffer financial burden. So I was like, no, these are great, but these are very minimal. Like, I want to do something, we need to do something bigger.
Mhm.
And so my aunt called me and she was like, hey, universities do endowment scholarships. And so I was like, oh, do tell. What is that all about? So an endowment scholarship is, you have a funding period. So it's usually about 5 years to completely fund an endowment. And then once the endowment is created, you then the scholarship is created, and the scholarship lasts as long as the university is an entity. So, I mean, if you're thinking like old school colleges, like some of them have been around since like, 1500s or something.
Mhm.
So ideally, colleges last for a long time. So what I ended up doing is starting an endowment scholarship through Colorado State University through the veterinarian program. And I called it the Neil B. Ericson Scholarship. This began the journey of raising $50,000 over a 5-year time frame. And that would then fund this endowment scholarship. So in the end, what I wanted to do is have just lessen the freaking financial burden on vet students, because my brother, and all of most of his classmates, I think they graduated with like $250,000 in debt. Like, that's a pretty penny. And that's not something that you're just going to pay off in 10 years. But I digress. Anyways, started this fund. Um, and it was such a journey. The first people, Ray, just being like, what? Anyways, so to bring it all together, this year was the 5th year to get that 50K in the bank. And Neil's birthday is July 27th. And as of July 27th, I still am going to meet with CSU to, fine tune everything. But as of July 27th, we hit the 50K mark, and it was so crazy. I'm still baffled. The whole heart thing I was just talking about? That's still exploding, and I don't know what is coming next, because holy moly, I'm so grateful and thankful and baffled and freaking out still, if you can't tell.
And what does it mean to you that Neil's legacy will live on because of what you created?
Oh my gosh. I guess I have a two-part answer, in the sense of I can't even put to words yet, because I was told, and it hasn't happened yet, but I was told that I'll be able to give the scholarships every year. So I think it's a twofold answer, because I don't know yet. I mean, obviously it's huge and crazy and awesome, and so many people donated. But also I think once, like, I get to see like the longer term effects, like, as long if I lived to 90 and I want to give out the scholarship, I could legit walk across stage and hand a kid scholarship money and be like, this is for Neil, basically. Like, so I think it's gonna be like, I don't know, interview me in another like 10 years and I'll have a different answer. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like the love and support around this too. Like, people coming up to me at random, like, oh, here's $5. I don't need the tax break or whatever. Here's $5. Um, when I ended up speaking with CSU about a year and a half ago, they were asking me like how I was doing and everything. And um one of the persons that I was speaking with, he was like, so how are you raising the money? Like, I was like, oh, just friends and family. Like, I'll post something on social media and then I'll share the link, and some friends and family will share the link, and people help out. And he was just like, he went silent, and he was just like, that's not usually what happens. So he said, usually like they already have 50K that they put into the endowment, or
Mhm.
like, big donors will come in, and like 5 big donors create the endowment. But this is one of the only ones that has been completely funded from the ground up, where it's just like, nope, we're not using like family money or whatever. It's just the
Mhm.
kindness of everybody that I've been talking to. And I am completely blown away. So many family members, so many friends, strangers, people have donated, and I am eternally grateful.
This is like what you did for his funeral all over again, creating a
Yeah.
celebration of his life from everybody.
Yeah. I mean, this was just the amount of love that came through for this is phenomenal. It's it just goes to show that humans are, like, I know the world is crazy right now, but like when you look at this situation, it's just like everybody was part of it. And it's so cool.
Yeah.
So cool.
Talk about turning your pain into passion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Seriously.
Like, how does it, like, when it gets hard, What drives you?
I think because it definitely got hard, and I know there's still hard times to come. Now technically being an only child and like just what's to come in the future and everything. I think it'll always come back to just like, eh, I don't even know, like if like what he would do for me, and also like what we always had as brother and sister type of thing. So it's like we had so much fun. We were always having fun. So like why not continue why not continue it, I guess. And so that, but also like giving myself grace of like, nope, sometimes I need to go rage into a pillow and like let that happen, but then keep coming back to, okay, joy, come back to it, because I don't know, that's like, what is life without love? So maybe that's cheesy, but yeah.
If, you know, it works, it's clearly working for you. And so
Yeah.
what advice would you give to somebody who has just experienced a loss like you did?
Uh, hmm. There's so many things. Definitely find your people, I'd say, and just lean in, because you don't need to do loss alone. You can if that is your choice. Like I'm not judging anybody who needs to go, just be by themselves. But honestly, there's so many people who are willing to help. And it's not like you have to, I don't know, depend on people to cook for you. I don't know, I'm going, whatever. But like if you just experience a loss, like don't judge yourself whatsoever. Feel all of the emotions, because they're going to come whether you want them to or not. And if you can just like let the emotions flow through you, that's going to help you so much better than trying to do it on your own and hold it all in. I will say there are a lot of resources out there that I reached out to. And while while the section at Barnes and Noble is not that big, there is a section, and there were a couple books that I read in there that really eased me in that time frame. Like it makes you feel like you're not alone. And that was powerful.
So what advice would you give people around someone who's lost somebody like this? So like family and friends, how to be around them, how to support them, the best way to support them from your experience.
Yeah. Let's see. So before Neil passed, I'm only laughing because like before Neil passed, I would be like, somebody posts on Facebook like, oh, I lost my XYZ, name a person, name an animal. And I'd be like, ooh, I need to give them space. Like I'm there for them, but like they're doing their own thing. Like I'll just let them be. Now, after Neil has passed, I mean, if someone says like I lost my pet rabbit, I will send them a message, and I'm just like, I'm here for you, whatever you need. Um, and like I said earlier, and from what I've experienced, every single person will experience death and grief in a very different way.
Mhm.
So I always try to be of the mind of like, put you out there. And if you're like someone who cooks food, like bring them meals. Or if you really want to send them a message, like most of the time I'll send somebody a message. I don't expect anything back, because everybody's doing their own thing. And I just want them to know that they're loved and I'm here for them. So I guess advice for somebody who has somebody in their life that's lost somebody is just like, let them know you're there, and that you can be that person, their person, to like, maybe if it's just an hour or a dinner, or they stay at your house for a week. Like, yeah, I guess just letting people know that we're all in this together, no matter what.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we are. And trying to do it alone. I mean, it might work for some people, but in my experience,
Sure.
it didn't work. It just made it worse.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes you're drowning in a puddle and you don't know that you can just stand up. And sometimes you need people around you to just be like, no, you got to stand up now. Like,
Yep.
let's move on, which is
Yeah,
hard, but yeah.
it is. So last question, please share Neil with the audience. Let us get to know him like you know him, as if he was here today.
Okay. Okay. I'm already laughing because he was so witty and like just absolutely hilarious. So like, um, as an example, I am 5'5", so I'm not super short, but I'm not that tall. He was at death, he was 6'5".
Wow.
And so he would walk up to me and stand right next to me. So like his chest was at my face level. And he would just like look around and he'd be like, Jess, where are you? Jess. So like he'd pull stuff like that. He was very quick-witted, very intelligent, hilarious, shy at first, but he always could make the entire room laugh. And man, he was just a really good guy and loved animals. So his corgi, her name was Ellie Belly Jelly Bean, and she's still with us. She's getting older, but yeah, I mean, him and his girlfriend had a parrot together. Like basically growing up, um, I'm a people person. I'm an extrovert and I love talking to as many people as possible. Neil was the introvert and he loved animals. So I would bring people back to the house and Neil would bring animals back to the house. So we always had a stray or something. I got my first pair of stitches was from a stray that he brought home that ended up getting in a fight with our dog. And I had to get stitches on Friday the 13th. There's so many stories and I can go on and on, but he was awesome. He was really funny. Yeah.
He sounded like an amazing man, and I'm glad
Yes.
that you shared so much of him. You just I can picture him towering over you, like, where's Jess? That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I know you've got a little something other than the archaeology going on, or at least you did last I knew. Share with the listeners how they can find you if they're in the Denver area.
Yeah. So my business partner Jasmine and I, we own a company called Community Connections LLC. We host International Archaeology Day. So the third weekend, or sorry, the third Saturday of every October, we're going to be at Red Rocks bringing you all things archaeology. Um, Neil used to call me Sistorian because I like history so much. So this year it's October 19th. We're going to be in Lower South Lot number 2. And we will be, yeah, well, it's like a little archaeology festival, and that's going to be the case for the next several years. So if you don't make it out this year, then you can come and celebrate with us for all the third Saturdays in October's to come.
And how can they sign up for that?
So as it stands right now, the event is free. You just need to get to Red Rocks and walk in. So yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
We've got a website. It's communityconnections.biz, B-I-Z, and it'll direct you to all the things there. It's really great.
Awesome. I'll make sure that's in the show notes. And thank you. It's always amazing talking with you. And thank you so much for sharing your experience and sharing Neil with me and with the world.
Ray, absolutely. I thank you so much for having me on. Thanks for all of your support throughout the years. I seriously, you have been a light in my life, so I appreciate you so much. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And this has been discussions on loss and grief with Ray Warner. And we'll be back next week with another amazing guest. Thank you for listening.